I'm Veronica. Sitting in this coffee shop, looking at my family across the table, I can't help but reflect on the past 12 days. They look like a shadow of their former selves. My father, Robert, has dark circles under his eyes, and his usually confident posture is now hunched. My mother, Linda, has smeared makeup, trying in vain to hide the evidence of her crying. My younger sister, Lily, sits stiffly, her eyes red and swollen, a legal envelope half hidden under her hand. It all started when I moved into my new apartment. I was carrying the last 2 storage bins in when my phone started vibrating violently. I expected a delivery update or a client message, but instead, I saw a Facebook post from my mother. There was my smiling face from moving day, a photo that should have marked a new beginning. The caption read, "The 28-year-old freeloader is finally gone. No more cooking for her." I was stunned at first. But as the likes and comments poured in, something inside me hardened. People I hadn't seen in years were laughing at me. One of my cousins brought up an old rejection from a job interview I'd long buried. Lily tagged her friends, and my ex-boyfriend liked the post. Strangely, I didn't cry or defend myself. I just took screenshots of every cruel comment and liked them all. You see, my family never understood my work. I run a digital marketing and analytics firm from my bedroom. It started small when I was 24. A local startup hired me to improve their online presence, and from there, my client base grew. By 28, I had clients in 3 states, a couple of part-time contractors working under my LLC, and enough savings to buy my apartment outright if I wanted to. But my family didn't see it that way. Since I worked from a laptop and kept irregular hours, they thought I was unemployed. My mother, Linda, had been spreading this lie for years. She's a proud but somewhat vain woman. She runs an online vintage clothing store, always boasting about how she built it from the ground up. In reality, I've spent countless late nights rebuilding her website, setting up shipping automations, and handling customer disputes. My father, Robert, owns a small auto repair shop. He's a stubborn man, always thinking he knows best. He's terrible with digital records, payroll, and tax filings. I've been the one keeping his business afloat, reconciling accounts and making sure he meets all his deadlines. Lily, on the other hand, is trying to become a social media influencer. She signed some shady contracts without understanding them, and I've been the one to catch the clauses that would have trapped her in unpaid work. I stayed with them not because I needed them, but because every time I tried to leave, something would go wrong. Their payment systems would start to collapse, rent checks would bounce, and I'd end up getting pulled back in. They called it helping out, but I was the one subsidizing their illusion of competence. When I finally decided to move out, I spent 6 weeks preparing for a clean break. I moved my client systems first, separated personal favors from professional services, and withdrew my credentials from all the places where my name was holding things together. The Facebook post was just the final straw. It confirmed my decision to stop being their unpaid labor. That day, as the comments on the post got meaner, my best friend, Mia, called. "Tell me you didn't respond," she said without even saying hello. I told her I hadn't. She sighed in relief. Mia was one of the few who knew the real me. She'd seen my contracts, balance sheets, and the long hours I put in. She knew how much my family relied on my work, even though they dismissed it as fake. That afternoon, I started taking action. I revoked device approvals, moved vendor reminders off my phone, and archived support templates I'd written for my mother's store. I removed my emergency authorization from my father's payroll service. Then I drafted a professional notice stating that I would no longer provide unpaid services to anyone not under a formal agreement with my firm. I attached documentation showing that I'd worked 1,150 unpaid hours over the past 10 months. As the days passed, things started to fall apart for my family. On the 4th day, my mother's online store started to slow down. A customer emailed an old support address that forwarded to me, asking why their orders hadn't shipped. I stared at the email and did nothing. It was hard, but I knew if I intervened, I'd be back in the same cycle. On the 5th day, my father's business hit a snag. He called and then hung up, too proud to ask for help. Then he texted, "Need login for accounting thing." I ignored him. By the 6th day, a neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, texted me, saying my mother had been in a terrible mood. The mail carrier couldn't get a signature, and she'd nearly cried. I almost laughed. Linda only cries when she wants to avoid accountability. On the 7th day, Lily texted me, "Can you check a contract real quick?" No apology, no concern for how I was feeling. I laughed and added her message to my screenshot folder. A few hours later, she sent more desperate texts, but I went for a walk instead. That walk was a turning point. For the first time in years, I felt free. No one was demanding anything from me. That night, I sent the formal notice to everyone who had mocked me. 12 minutes later, the calls started pouring in. My father called twice, my mother 4 times, and Lily sent 3 all caps messages. I went to sleep, ignoring them all. The next morning, I woke up to a flood of missed calls, texts, and a panicked voicemail from my aunt, Carol. She said there was a misunderstanding about the tax filings for her small antique shop. I almost laughed at the word misunderstanding. People always call it that when they lose access to something they think they're entitled to. Over the next few days, the problems escalated. My mother's store was flooded with complaints, my father's business was on the verge of defaulting on payments, and Lily was facing legal threats from a brand she'd signed a contract with. On the 10th day, a customer publicly posted about my mother's store taking payment but not delivering the goods. The post went viral in our local community. People started to connect the dots and realized that I was the one keeping everything together. Even those who had laughed at me before started to go quiet. By the evening of the 11th day, Mia came over. She saw my phone lighting up constantly with panicked messages and calls. She said, "They're not calling because they love you. They're calling because the scaffolding came down." She was right. It would be easy to mistake their panic for remorse, but I knew better. That night, my father sent a message that hit me hard. "We may lose the house." I knew he'd been in financial trouble for a while. I'd warned him about over-ordering inventory and relying too much on delayed payments, but he'd gotten offended. Now, he was facing the consequences. On the 12th day, at 8:14 in the morning, my phone rang. I answered because I wanted to hear the apology, if there was going to be one. My mother was crying before she even said my name. She admitted that the Facebook post had gotten out of hand, that she'd been joking but didn't think it would spread. She said she didn't know I'd been doing so much. I told her exactly what I'd been doing for years. I listed all the systems I'd managed, the contracts I'd reviewed, and the problems I'd solved. I told her that while she was joking about cooking my meals, I was preventing her store from going under. She finally said, I was wrong. It was a simple statement, but it meant the world to me. An hour later, my father called and asked to meet me in person. He sounded broken, not demanding like he usually was. I agreed to meet them at this coffee shop. Now, sitting here, I look at them and know that things will never be the same. I told them I'm not moving back, not restoring unpaid access. If they want my help, they'll have to sign contracts and pay like any other client. My father nodded and asked about the retainer. His face turned pale when I told him the amount. My mother asked if there was anything else they could do. I told her to tell the truth publicly, just like she'd lied. She posted the apology right then, and Lily posted one too. Over the next week, the calls became less desperate. Contracts were sent, and 2 were signed. I took my father on as a limited-term client because his mess affected Lily, and I didn't want to see them lose everything. I refused to help my mother's store unless she hired a proper assistant. And I referred Lily to an attorney for her contract mess. As I sit here, sipping my coffee, I know that I've finally taken control of my life. I've stopped letting others define my worth. The people who laughed at me are now realizing the true value of my work. And I'll never forget the lesson I've learned: never let cruelty disguised as family humor tell you what you're worth.